Hi everyone, thank you for joining the webinar today. Don't dwell on learning loss, assess students as readers, not numbers. My name is Kira Harakel and I'm a member of the Text Help marketing team and I'll be your moderator for today's session. We have a great presentation lined up today, but before we get started, I have just a couple of small housekeeping items. Today's session is going to be in listen only mode, but we would love to hear from you and answer your questions throughout the session. I'd like to introduce you all to Jason Carroll, who is the Director of Product Management here at TextHelp. Jason oversees the updates and releases to all of TextHelp's literacy and STEM solutions. Prior to TextHelp, Jason was an educational technology consultant in the state of Kentucky for nearly a decade. And our second presenter today is Jim Monty, who has been an educator at West Warwick Public Schools in Rhode Island for over 32 years. He serves as a support for students, teachers, support staff, parents, and administrators in his role as the Director of Educational Reform, Compliance, and Technology. Jim works with a dedicated visionary group of educators that continually strive to provide West Warwick schools with the best educational experience that they have to offer. So you're in great hands today. And without further delay, I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to Jason.
Thank you, Kira. Right, so I am assuming everyone can hear me okay. Kira, keep me straight and let me know if something's not showing up right or the audio is not coming through. But here's our plan for today. We've got the next hour or so with you guys and really appreciate everyone that's here. This is our plan. I'm going to start off with just a few stats and then I'm going to go through Fluency Tutor. I'm going to show a quick demo on that. Then I'm going to hand that over to Jim. Jim's going to talk about what the data is telling us, his experience and what they're doing at West Warwick Public Schools, and a little more on the story there, and then we'll have some time for questions and answers at the end. So let's just get to it. So no surprise to the first statement, there are lots of struggling readers in the world today. I don't think that's news for any of us, and it gets a little bit more complex when we think about the current environment that we're in. These stats come from the Nation's Report Card. If you're not familiar with that, every couple of years in the United States anyway, the government kind of takes a tally to see how students are doing it at grade 4 and grade 8, good reading, writing, mathematics, range of other areas. But unfortunately, it's not changed. They've been tracking this for, what, Jim, nearly 30 years now, and I don't know that the data has really changed that much. For as long as I can remember, it's always been that over 60% of 4th and 8th graders continue to score below proficient in reading. I find it interesting that it's grade 4 and grade 8, mainly because of the achievement gap that most of you have probably heard about, mentioned anytime that education and achievement is brought up. And that achievement gap shows that if students, once they reach a certain age, if they haven't mastered a lot of the basic concepts of reading and writing and those sort of things, a lot of time it doesn't get better. So that can explain why in grade 4, if you haven't become a proficient reader, why in grade 8 you may also still not be a proficient reader. If we think about it, a lot of times in the early grades, students are taught how to read, but then after that they change that and they're expected to read to learn instead of learn to read. So that's where the achievement gap often comes in. So it's not all negative news though. There are some things that we can do. Technology can definitely help with this. Jim's going to talk about some things they're doing in his district that has definitely helped. One thing that I always like to start off with though, that's not really even related to technology, is the fact that becoming an avid reader will change not only your life, but your students' life for the better. And I have a little bit of stats to back that up. This came from an educator. I should have had that's David Rose when he was at Harvard. But he had the quote that said, a child who becomes an avid reader will have consumed 400 times more text by the age of 16. So if you think about that, 400 times the amount of text, what would that mean for that student? What would it be like to have a conversation with a student who had read 400 times more than another student, right? Their vocabulary is going to be larger, their general knowledge of the world is going to be different. So the first thing we want to do is just encourage kids to read. Another thing about avid readers is they are fluent readers, and that gets us into the core of what we're going to talk about today. So when we talk about fluency, what is reading fluency? Well, the definition of that, if you broke it down, would be the ability to read quickly, but also to read accurately and with the appropriate expression. And this is measured in a standard way. It's been measured in this way for a long time. and that's going to be in words correct per minute. The great thing about that is there are already norms established out there at different grade levels so that you will know if a student in grade 4 is reading a certain words correct per minute, you'll know if they're on grade level or behind grade level. So it really is a nice way to be able to track and measure fluency over time. And that's where Fluency Tutor comes in. How we've traditionally taught children to read fluently, or at least assess them, has been a little bit manual, right? If you'll think of how we do running records, a student is given something to read. The teacher has a copy of the same thing. The student reads, and as the student reads for 1 minute, the teacher goes through and marks words that were mispronounced or words that were skipped or if there were hesitations. And not only is that a tedious thing to do, but it's also a bit stressful, right? Could you imagine from the student perspective being expected to sit across from a teacher and read aloud and seeing little red marks go across the paper as you're reading? So that's the way traditionally that fluency has been assessed, and then from that you get your words correct per minute, and then you can check against the norms and see if students are progressing or not. But that's where Fluency Tutor comes in to help make that digital. Now, Fluency Tutor, it's a Google app that does several things, right? First of all, it improves confidence when reading aloud. The more students interact with Fluency Tutor, they can do that independent of the teacher, become more comfortable with reading aloud and with reading certain types of text. It's great to support struggling readers or English language learners because, as I'll show you, there's a lot of supports that are built in. It's super friendly. If you're a G Suite user, it integrates in with Google Drive, it integrates in with Google Classroom, single sign-on with your Google ID. It also allows for that real-time teacher-student feedback, which can be really difficult in our current environment to where many of us may be remote learning when school starts back instead of the normal face-to-face instruction that we've traditionally had. And finally, there's a lot of flexibility in it. I mentioned about becoming an avid reader. One way to help students become avid readers is to give them content to read that's interesting to them. As you'll see, Fluency Tutor has loads of passages in there that students can choose from or that teachers can choose from to share with students, but students can also create or find their own passages or make passages that are of high interest to them. So that's my slide deck. I'm going to hand it over to Jim so he can talk about how Fluency Tutor is being used in his district.
All right. So first of all, I threw a collection that we utilize in our district for PD. It is really set up to kind of give you the ins and outs of how to set up Fluency Tutor for your classroom, how to use all of the different tools in there. It's something that we use with our teachers in our school district. So I'm really happy to be here. We have been using text help products forever in our school district. West Warwick, Rhode Island is a little town and the littlest state in the country. We are a district of about 3,700 students. We have approximately 325 certified teachers, and we really love the tools that are available through text help, starting way back with text help gold a long time ago and read write a long time ago, and now we've been one-to-one for about 7 years. So it was the first tool that we actually purchased for all of our students in our district, and we use quite a few of the text help products every day. And I think the first thing that we want to answer is, why do we use Fluency Tutor in West Warwick Public Schools? Why is that important to us? So we have a really huge commitment to a comprehensive literacy program, right? So we're not just interested in phonics aspect of literacy acquisition, and we're not just interested in reading good stories. We're interested in all of those things. So we really wanted tools to help us with that. So it's the first thing. We want to make sure that our teachers and our students have a great understanding of phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. And if you can go to the next one, and it really fits right into this idea about the simple view of reading. So our district really tries to utilize a scientific approach to literacy development and understanding what that means. And so we know that kids need to decode, they need language comprehension. And when they have both of those things, it increases their reading comprehension. And so Fluency Tutor fits right into that. And I put a few links in the slides regarding some of the resources that we use with our teachers when we talk about the science of reading and the simple view of reading. And what that really means for us is that it helps us to get to know our reading, right? Because we've been utilizing miscue analysis in our district forever. And what we end up doing is we end up talking about students as levels, right? Here are my level L kids if we're talking about now, or if we talk about Lexile levels. And we're really not talking about who our students are as readers. And that's really what's most important to us. And so my role in the district is I get to work with folks in technology, professional development, and curriculum. We all work together in one department. And so that means that when we start talking about tools and we start talking about assessments and we start talking about professional development, all of the same people are around the table. And as a person who's responsible for working with students and adults in our school district, I wanted to make sure that we talked about our kids as readers, right? I wanted us to be able to talk about and have interactions with each other about what was going on in a kid's reading, right? Because when we look at the simple view of reading, we know that some kids are struggling with decoding and some struggle with language comprehension. And the trick is to figure out what we need to do next with our students. So we want to be able to assess not only their knowledge of phonemic awareness or phonics or letter sound combinations. We also want to be able to hear what they're doing in terms of that, and then make sure that they're truly progressing as readers. So what we really wanted to do was have a tool to help us get there, right? And I've seen teachers bring paper miscue analysis to meetings before, and it's really hard to get the life of that student as a reader off of that flat page. So we needed a tool to help us with that. Jason, if you can go to the next slide for us. So it really fits into our beliefs about who we are as a learning community. So we're a diverse community, right? Most of our community is lower socioeconomic students. We have a high free and reduced lunch population in 2 of our elementary schools, 70 and 80%. Overall, our free and reduced lunch population is right around 52 to 55% each year. We really want to be able to support our staff and our students. We're committed to learning together. Go to the next one, Jason. We want our kids to be doers, right? We want them to be critical, creative thinkers, collaborators, and effective communicators. So when we went one-to-one 7 years ago in our school district, we did it because we looked at it as an issue in equity, right? We didn't say, oh, let's get computers or let's get Chromebooks because it's a great tool. We got them because we wanted our kids to be able to communicate, collaborate, and create together, right? And we wanted them to be doers. We also know that we need to align our education to the needs of individual students in our district. So those are some of the tenets that drive us. We also know that we're a diverse community. So we have Black students, students of color, Indigenous students in our school district, our staff as well. We recognize and wanted to make sure that every student, every person gets to tell their story in our school district. And then everyone's held accountable to develop risk-taking and demonstrating responsibility, right? So in order to be a lifelong learner that we all talk about, we all need to push ourselves and get out of our comfort zone. So we really wanted to create opportunities where we practice that with our students and our staff. You can go to the next slide, Jason, that would be great. So this is kind of the heart and soul of how we look at ourselves in our district. It's about the work we do. It's always been about the work we do. We want our students to be steeped in real work, authentic work, and work that feeds our souls. We want to be excited learners in a community of learners together, right? And we want them to collaborate and create and be scientists and social scientists, and readers, writers, mathematicians, artists, and so on, right? So that means that they need to be engaged in the real tasks that readers and writers do. So we want our kids to have real text in front of them that they're performing, and we understand what that performance looks like. And we also get a lot of visitors to our district every year, and one of the folks, so if you click one more time, this is kind of the thing that sums up our district the most. It's one of the quotes that I'm most proud of when people come visit us. Laurie Carrero, who's a professor at the University of Rhode Island, who looks at, she's like one of the premier scientists regarding language acquisition and screen reading. And so Laurie visits our district a lot, and she, after one of our visits, folks usually kind of leave a message to the teachers. And she said, I've never been to a school district where the teachers come to work every day to learn. And I think that is indicative of our school district, and it means that we need tools to support what our beliefs are. And I put those two slides there because it's really hard for us to get that out of a bunch of multiple choice questions that kids answer on paper or on a screen, right? And so I wanted you to understand how steeped we are in that work together as a school district, because then we need the right tools to do that. And so when we were looking at what we needed for students regarding assessing their reading, Fluency Tutor was a simple fit for us. And it really made a lot of sense. So Jason already showed you, what basically takes place. And you can see that from here, that teacher can go through and do a miscue analysis, right? And what's important about that for us as a school district is it's about the kids reading. And we have meetings with teachers and reading specialists several times a school year, where we sit down and we look at the data that we've collected regarding our students as readers. And we wanted to be able to sit down and listen to a student's reading passage together and say, what do we know about this student? What can this student do? What have they mastered as a reader? And then what do we think they're struggling with next? Where are they breaking down in their reading? Why do we think that's so? What are the reasons behind that? And it really has improved the depth of the conversation that we have about individual students, because now when we start talking about interventions, it's really based on what we know is next in the student's progression regarding their learning, right? What we know they need to do next. So if we have a student and we see that and we hear that they're struggling with simple CVC vowel combinations, we're not even going to worry about multisyllabic words. We know that we need to back up with this student. We might even have to go back and start saying, is this really a phonemic awareness issue? Is it an issue regarding the student's oral language? So just having these tools available means that we can actually present a passage to our students and then listen to that information as colleagues and as a professional learning community. One of the things that we did this year with our teachers is we identified some passages that we wanted all second grade kids to read, right? And what we did was we sent out those benchmark passages to our students using Fluency Tutor, and then across the district, we have 200 second graders. Every single one of those students recorded their passage, and then we scored those, and then we talked about it. And we got to talk about things in terms of what a kid's doing generally well in the second grade. How does that comport with what we're doing in terms of our direct phonics instruction? You can go on to the next slide, Jason. Right, and it starts to give us this real data points about our students and their reading performance. And what's interesting about this slide, this is a real kid in our district. You can see that, so from the beginning of the school year to just about January, we did a lot of PD with our teachers. And you can see that this student had a couple of passages. Well, once March hit, you can see that they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 additional passages that the teacher scored regarding that student. That was all during our response to COVID-19 and distance learning. And so this tool became a real lifesaver for us because we got to listen to our students and their reading performance at a time when it was difficult to do that. And because we had worked with our teachers earlier in the school year, we had a ton of evidence about who our students were as readers during this time where they were participating in distance learning. And one of the things that I was most excited about was early on, we talked with Jason and folks at Text Help and said, hey, we love this, but we want the data. Like, we just don't want it in the dashboard here. So one of the things that Text Help did, if you can go to the next slide, Jason, is they created a tool where we could export all of that data and put it into our data system. So this is just a brief snapshot of some of the data that we imported into our data system. But what's incredible about it is, and you can see, like, where it's a Fluency Tutor assessment, it's got Fluency Tutor tagged on there, as well as the passage and the Fontes and Pinnell level. And then we have all of this other data regarding words correct per minute, the number of words per minute, the actual percentage rate of accuracy, and then every single correction that student, every miscue that student had, we got to actually have all of that data into our data system. So we got to look at all the second grade students and say, how many of them used substitution or omission as a strategy in their reading? And if we said, oh my God, we have 40% of the kids that use those two strategies, wait a minute, that's a problem for us. We need to back up and talk to kids about what readers do. And readers read the words, right? They don't guess at the words and they don't omit the words. They actually look at those words and try to attack those words. So it really allowed us to match what we wanted to see from students as readers with what are we doing in our classrooms? Why are we seeing this kind of data? And there's no judgment regarding that. It was just teachers sitting down with teachers and reading specialists and our literacy coach to talk about that information together. So it gave us real data points to talk about our students as real readers, not as in a level, this, or we have students, teachers in our district whose children go to other school districts, and when they sit down, they might say, oh, your child scored this on this assessment, and that's the kind of feedback they get from their child's teacher about reading instead of what their child is actually doing as a reader. So this really helped us kind of match that. Can you go to the next slide, Jason? So what does this really help us do? It really helps us zero in on the decoding issues that we're seeing. So when we start looking at the miscue analysis, teachers start to really be able to, because they can hear that reading over and over again, they get to say, I can see that this student is really got the CVC down pat regarding short vowel sounds. I can see that they even have silent E, and they actually have, when we look at vowel teams, they have that. But their next step is multisyllabic words. And so that teacher is able to take that information from what they heard through their students' readings and really make sure that they're zeroing in and grouping students appropriately regarding issues around decoding. We go to the next one, Jason, please. It also lets us look at language comprehension, right? So what is this student doing regarding their language comprehension? So Jason talked about the fact that you can create your own content in Fluency Tutor. We did that for our passages. We also wanted our students to dig a little deeper regarding some of the comprehension questions. So we actually created Google Forms that went along with the Fluency Tutor text. So we could listen to it, and then we got a deeper understanding of their language comprehension, and we could start to try to figure out, is this a processing issue for our students, or is it a decoding issue, or is it both, right? And then what that really allowed us to do, if you go to the next box, Jason, is it let us know our readers, right? We got to hear a student's performance, we got to analyze it, and then we got to tell kids very specifically, here's what you need to do next. Here's your next step in your learning. And when you do that, and I'll help you do that, by the way, as your teacher, and your classmates will help you do that, you'll become a better, more fluent reader, right? And we always got to talk to the kids about what their fluency levels look like regarding that. And all of that information is collected in this process that we can use and talk about in grade level collaborative learning teams, right? So all third grade teachers could talk about their students as a group and then say, hey, folks, I want you to listen to this. I don't know what to do about this kid. Like, listen to this passage with me. Can you help me out? What do I need to work on next? So it really helped us as a team start having conversations about getting to know what our readers were doing, and just as importantly, what did they need to do next? And as a teacher, how could I support that? You can go to the next slide, please. So it's really, when it really comes down to it, it's really about all of those pieces and how Fluency Tutor really was like an answer for us, because we looked at all kinds of tools throughout the last couple of years, and none of them really matched with what we were trying to do in our school district. We already had norm referenced or criterion referenced assessments, or things about phonemic awareness or phonological awareness or phonics, and we needed to go much deeper than that as well. So it really was all about getting to know our learners at a deeper level. I don't know how folks do have any questions for us.
Do you have any sort of anecdotal feedback from any of your students that you can share on what they think of the program or how it's kind of impacted their learning?
Yeah, so actually one of my favorite stories is a third grader. So he was in fourth grade, and this is going back not this past year, but the previous year. He started using it in third grade, and he read a passage, and the passage was a struggle for him. I mean, he muscled through it, but it was a struggle. And so I wanted him to work with some of our teachers, and we actually have our students actually help deliver PD in our school district. So we train our students up, and our teachers are really open to having kids come in and working with them, right? So I was working with this student, And I said, hey, I noticed you read this passage last year. Can you read this passage again? And it was almost a year difference, almost to the day. And he read that passage and read it with absolute, like 99% accuracy, great fluency, prosody, the whole thing. It was just a beautiful example of student reading growth, because he actually listened to his previous year, and I'll never forget, he was like, consider? Who says consider? Because the word was consider, right? And he was just at that point in that school year, they were just really starting to work on multisyllabic words. So he wasn't secure in that. So just him being able to go back and listen to his own reading and then know the growth that he had over that period of time just gave me goosebumps, right? Because that's what we want our kids to see. We want them to be able to see that they grow from year to year, that this isn't something that's always a struggle, even though it seems like it is, because we're always pushing them to the next level, to the next bit of text, to more difficult text. And so they forget how much they've grown as readers. So for them to have that historical record that they have access to, I think is really powerful for our students. So it's really, even just thinking about it now, I love, like, I can picture him talking to me and laughing, like, consider, how crazy is that? But just thinking about the fact that consider wasn't in his vocabulary tool bag at that point, right? He didn't have that vocabulary even orally as an 8-year-old, but a year later as a 9-year-old he did, right? And so just even in terms of that, it gives us so much insight into what kids are doing as readers. I don't know if
Absolutely.
that answered the question.
Yeah, it absolutely did. That was a great story. Thanks for sharing. Lastly, I just want to say a huge thank you to our presenters today, and thank you everybody for joining us. We hope that everybody has a great rest of your day.